Picture this. You're driving home late at night. The road is empty, and everything feels perfect. Then, out of nowhere, the temperature gauge creeps higher and higher until it slams into the red. A hiss escapes from under the hood. Steam clouds the windshield, and in seconds your quiet drive turns into a full-blown roadside disaster. Most people think this happens because of bad luck, but the truth? Cooling system failure is one of the most common and most preventable killers of engines. Here's what nobody tells you. Every overheated car you've seen on the side of the road had warning signs long before that moment. And yet, there's one simple move that almost nobody does, something so basic, but so powerful. It can literally extend the life of your cooling system for decades. Mechanics know it, car fanatics swear by it, but the average driver never even thinks about it. If you've ever wondered why some cars push past 300,000 miles without a hiccup, while others break down before hitting 100K, this is the secret. Stick with me, because once you hear it, you'll never look at your car the same way again. Your car's cooling system is more important than most people ever realize. It's not just about keeping the temperature gauge steady. It's the difference between an engine that lasts for decades and one that self-destructs in an instant. Every time you start your car, the engine begins creating explosions thousands of times per minute. That process generates heat, so intense it could melt metal if left unchecked. The only reason your engine survives is because the cooling system acts like a shield, absorbing that heat, circulating it away, and releasing it through the radiator. But here's the truth most drivers don't want to hear. This system isn't indestructible. In fact, it's one of the most fragile parts of your car. If the balance is thrown off even slightly, whether from low coolant, a failing pump, or rust clogging the passages, the entire cycle collapses. And when that happens, it's not a small issue. We're talking warped cylinder heads, cracked blocks, and blown gaskets. Repairs so expensive that many people end up junking the car altogether. Think about it. You've probably seen it yourself. Steam billowing from under a hood on the side of the highway. A driver pacing around, phone in hand, realizing their trusty car is now an expensive headache. The sad part, in most cases, that disaster could have been prevented with a little awareness and a tiny bit of routine care. That's why understanding your cooling system isn't just some extra trivia for gearheads. It's essential knowledge for anyone who owns a car, because once you know how it really works, you start to see just how many silent threats are waiting to take it down. So how do you stop that nightmare before it ever starts? It all begins with the most basic, overlooked habit: checking your coolant. Sounds simple, right? But here's the kicker. Most people pop their hood maybe once or twice a year, if at all. Meanwhile, coolant slowly evaporates, hoses develop tiny leaks, and what's left behind is a mix that's either too weak or too corrosive to do its job. The secret isn't just topping it off, it's keeping the balance right. A proper 50-50 mix of antifreeze and water is like armor for your engine. It keeps coolant from boiling when temperatures climb, protects it from freezing in the cold, and shields metal parts from rust and corrosion. Miss that balance, and suddenly your protection turns into poison, eating away at your system from the inside. Here's what makes it even more shocking. A single 5-minute check under the hood can save you from a breakdown that costs thousands. Yet drivers roll the dice every day because they think, if the car is running, it must be fine. That one mistake is exactly why you see cars stranded on the roadside with steam pouring out. And while a simple level check is the first step, it's not the only threat you need to watch out for. But here's the thing. Even if your coolant mix is perfect, your system can still betray you. And one of the most silent killers is airflow restriction. Your radiator relies on air rushing through those thin aluminum fins to pull heat out of the coolant. But over time, those fins start acting like a giant bug trap. Dirt, road salt, leaves, and even plastic bags from the street get caught up front. At first, you won't even notice. The temperature gauge looks normal. The car feels fine. But mile after mile, that wall of debris builds thicker, and your radiator slowly suffocates. Imagine running a marathon with a towel duct taped over your mouth. That's exactly what your car goes through when the radiator can't breathe. And the result is always the same. The cooling system gets overwhelmed. You'll be cruising along on a hot summer day, maybe with the AC blasting, and suddenly the gauge spikes. Steam pours out, coolant boils over, and you're stranded on the side of the road, wondering what went wrong. What makes this so frustrating is that the solution is ridiculously simple. A gentle rinse with low-pressure water or compressed air can restore that airflow in minutes. Some mechanics even recommend checking your radiator fins as often as you check your oil. especially if you drive in dusty areas or through lots of bugs. But because drivers don't see the buildup happening, they never think about it until the system collapses under the pressure. And here's the kicker. Clogged fins aren't the only airflow problem. Bent fins can also block cooling efficiency, and they usually happen from small impacts, pebbles, careless car washes, even pressure washers blasting too hard. Those tiny bends create hot spots inside your radiator that gradually stress the engine. So even if your coolant is topped up, and even if the mix is perfect, your cooling system is always at risk if it can't breathe. Keeping it clean is step 2 of making it last forever. But airflow is only part of the puzzle, because deeper inside your system are 3 components most people completely ignore, the ones that decide whether coolant keeps moving or stalls out entirely. Airflow keeps the radiator cool, but it's the moving parts inside your system that decide whether the job gets done. And here's where most breakdowns really begin, the parts nobody pays attention to until they fail: the water pump, the thermostat, and the radiator cap. The water pump is the heart of your cooling system. Every second your engine runs, it's pushing coolant through the block, into the radiator, and back again. But like any pump, it wears down. Bearings get noisy, seals start leaking, and the impeller inside can corrode. The warning signs are subtle: a faint whining sound, a small drip under the car, or maybe the temp gauge running just a little hotter than usual. Ignore those signs, and the pump will eventually stop circulating coolant altogether. And when that happens, your engine is done. Then there's the thermostat. It's a tiny piece of metal, smaller than your hand, but it controls the flow of coolant like a gatekeeper. Too cold, it keeps coolant inside the engine, so it warms up fast. Too hot, it opens wide to let the coolant circulate. But when a thermostat sticks closed, coolant can't move, and overheating happens almost instantly. Stick it open, and your engine never reaches proper operating temperature, which quietly ruins performance and fuel economy over time. And finally, the most overlooked part of all, the radiator cap. Most drivers think it's just a lid, but it's far more than that. The cap maintains pressure in the system, and that pressure is what keeps coolant from boiling even when temperatures climb past 220 degrees. A weak or worn cap lets pressure escape, and suddenly your coolant starts boiling at a much lower temperature. That means your system could fail on a day when everything seems normal. No leaks, no noise, just heat creeping in until the engine gives up. What's scary is that these 3 components are cheap compared to the damage they prevent, but because they don't fail loudly, people forget about them. By the time you notice, the damage is already done. And for drivers who really want their cooling system to last forever, there's one more step, an upgrade that can push your car's heat management far beyond what it was built for. So far we've talked about habits and hidden parts, but what if you want to take your cooling system beyond basic survival? This is where upgrades come in. The kind of improvements that transform your system from just working to built to last. One of the easiest and most effective upgrades is switching to electric cooling fans. Traditional belt-driven fans only spin with engine speed, which means at low RPMs, like when you're stuck in traffic, they aren't moving much air. Electric fans, on the other hand, run independently and keep airflow strong even when the car is crawling. That extra airflow makes a huge difference in preventing overheating in city driving or hot climates. Another serious upgrade is adding an external oil cooler. Most people think of oil as just lubrication, but it also carries heat away from the engine. When oil temperatures climb too high, it thins out, loses effectiveness, and puts even more stress on the cooling system. By adding a dedicated oil cooler, you take some of that load off, keeping both oil and coolant temperatures under control. For anyone who tows heavy loads, drives in extreme heat, or just pushes their car hard, this one upgrade can add years to engine life. Even radiators themselves can be upgraded. Stock radiators are fine for average driving, but aluminum performance radiators with larger cores and better fin density can dissipate heat far more efficiently. Combine that with high-flow water pumps or reinforced silicone hoses, and suddenly your cooling system isn't just surviving, it's thriving under conditions that would destroy a weaker setup. And here's the best part. These upgrades aren't just for race cars or enthusiasts. Many of them bolt right into everyday vehicles and provide peace of mind on long drives, summer road trips, or city commutes. But no matter how many upgrades you throw in, there's still one maintenance step that decides if your cooling system truly lasts forever, and it's the one most people skip until it's too late. Upgrades are powerful, but none of them matter if you skip the single most important maintenance step of all, flushing your cooling system. Over time, coolant isn't the same bright, clean liquid you poured in years ago. It slowly breaks down, loses its protective additives, and starts turning into something far more dangerous, a corrosive soup that eats away at metal, hoses, and gaskets from the inside out. Think of it like this. Just as stagnant water breeds bacteria, stagnant coolant breeds rust, sediment, and sludge. That sludge clogs the narrow passages in your radiator and engine block, cutting off circulation. Even the best radiator or pump in the world can't save your car once those passages are blocked. A proper flush clears all of that out, replacing it with fresh coolant that can do its job, regulating temperature, fighting corrosion, and raising the boiling point under pressure. And here's the kicker. The type of coolant matters. Using the wrong one, or mixing incompatible types, can trigger chemical reactions that create even more sludge and damage. That's why experts always recommend sticking to the coolant specified by your manufacturer, or upgrading to a long-life formula that's fully compatible. And the routine is simple. Every couple of years, or as often as your manual suggests, flush the old coolant. Refill with the correct 50-50 mix, and you've just extended the life of your cooling system dramatically. It's a small step that pays back in years of stress-free driving. But now comes the part that ties everything together. Because when you combine regular flushes with smart upgrades, clean airflow, healthy components, and simple habits, you're not just maintaining your cooling system, you're making it practically bulletproof. So when you step back and look at it, the secret to making your cooling system last forever isn't magic. It's a chain of simple moves that work together like armor. Keep your coolant levels right. Clean your radiator so it can breathe. Protect the heart of the system with a healthy pump, thermostat, and cap. Invest in smart upgrades like electric fans or an oil cooler, and never skip those flushes. Each step might feel small on its own, but together they create a system that's almost unstoppable. Most cars fail not because they're built poorly, but because they're neglected. And once a cooling system gives out, the damage it leaves behind is usually permanent. But now you know the truth. Just a little attention and the right habits can add years, even decades, to your engine's life. At the end of the day, you can't stop the clock from ticking, but with smart care, you can stop the breakdowns before they ever begin. The question is, will you wait until you're stranded on the side of the road, or will you take control now and make your car's cooling system practically eternal?